All right, we should be live. Welcome, everybody. We got a lot of familiar faces in the chat. See, Toby F. We got Michael here for the first time. Waldez, Steve is here. Julio's here. We have Benny, Dennis, Ryan, Zelda. Welcome, Steve. $25 viewers, and we are going over pawn structures today. It's going to be a good one. Okay, so we have 6 different games to review today, all on pawn structures, and it's going to be an interactive lesson as usual. So a lot of questions for you guys in the chat. And I've been losing my voice, so hopefully it holds up. Okay, so if you're in the chat, let me know, where are you watching from today? Where is everybody watching from? Okay, we got Reno, Nevada, Nepal, Czechia, Naperville, Illinois, London, St. Louis, Gainesville, Florida, Rochester, Minnesota, Germany, Stockholm, Sweden, Georgia, USA, Seattle, Norway, welcome. All right, so let's go to an introduction. So, do you ever finish the opening and think, now what do I do? Oftentimes, the answer is based on pawn structure. The pawn structure is going to be your strategic roadmap to figure out what your plan is. So today we're going to talk about plans, not just specific moves. We're going to cover 3 different structures: IQP, hanging pawns, and then Caro-Kann Tartakower. And it's going to be an interactive class, so I'll be asking you guys questions throughout. And the goal is for you guys to spot these patterns in games and then instantly know this would be a good plan in this position just based on the pawn structure. Yeah, so many international viewers. Awesome, awesome. Okay, so let's go into game number 1. So we have Botvinnik, Mikhail Botvinnik with the white pieces. And we have Milan Vidmar with the black pieces. So we're going to see a Queen's Gambit declined. And then we reach this position on move number 10, which is called an IQP position. So IQP means isolated queen pawn. So it's a queen pawn for white with no pawns on either side. What do you guys think the eval is here? Put your answer in the chat. And what are the pros and cons to this pawn sitting on d4? So put your answers in the chat. Eval, pros and cons to that pawn on d4. That's the isolated queen pawn, the IQP. Promotion City, nice. Okay, we see a plus 1.2, plus 0.3, 0.2. White has to defend the pawn as a con. A pro is space in the center. Positions equal. Point 2, 0.3. Very good. You guys are right on track. So the eval here is 0.1. Very tiny advantage for white. Now, the advantages for white, you guys have already highlighted in the chat. The pawn on d4 gives white more space. It anchors this important square on e5, and white should look to attack. So when you have the IQP, usually you look to attack. Play for the initiative. From the flip side, black has a better pawn structure long term. There's just 2 pawn islands for black. So this is 1 pawn island here. This is a 2nd pawn island. White has 3 pawn islands. 1 over here, 1 in the middle, and 1 on the king side. So 2 pawn islands to 3. black's pawn structure is more solid long term. So what black should look to do is make this pawn on d4 the weakest pawn on the board. And black should look to trade pieces, because every piece that's traded off is a potential attacker for white. So in general, when you're going against the IQP, look for those trades. All right, so let's go forward a little bit. Knight b6 by black, blockading the pawn, right? This is an important square. The square right in front of the isolated queen pawn. Black is blockading it. Hits the bishop. Bishop to d7. And this is the worst piece for black. So where is that guy headed? The bishop wants to go to c6. From c6, it gets on this diagonal. Helps control the d5 square. So that's the key. Control that square right in front of the pawn, the IQP. Queen to d3. And look what white wants to do. So white's got the queen side, or the isolated queen pawn. White wants to attack on the king side. Use that isolated pawn to anchor an attack. So this queen on d3 is eyeing the pawn on h7 and connects the rooks. So white's getting ready to bring those rooks into the attack. All the minor pieces for white are well placed here. Now we see knight d to b5. Mission accomplished for black. Mission number 1, blockade the pawn. So now, question for you guys in the chat. What should white's plan be in this position? So black's got the pawn blockaded. Black's pieces all look pretty solid too. Bishop's headed to c6. White's got their minor pieces and queen well placed. But now, what should white's plan be? So I want you to put your answers in the chat. Okay, keep pressuring the king side. Trade pieces for black. Yep, white should keep pieces on unless it helps with the attack. a3, followed by bishop to c2. That's a common idea. Create that battery against the h7 pawn, queen and bishop. Dennis says bishop c2, rooks on d1 and e1. Ian is saying knight e5 followed by f4. That's another very common idea with the IQP. Look to play knight e5 and f4. Ryan's saying overprotect the IQP, attack kingside. Keep pressure. That's from Benny. Pretty R is saying put pressure, double the rooks. Good. Ryan likes knight e5. Perfect. You guys are all on the right track. Knight e5. This is the move Botvinnik played. So usually this pawn on d4 does an awesome job supporting the knight e5 outpost. And that knight on e5 is usually the way that white starts the attack. So black should actually look to get rid of that knight too. Bishop c6, rook a d1. Now we see knight to b4 by black. This move looks active, but it actually helps white a little bit. The best move for black here is knight to d7. This keeps the game in just that slight advantage territory for white. So why is knight to d7 better than knight b4? Knight to d7 offers a trade of the bishops and offers a trade of the knights. Black is Milan Vidmar, V-I-D-M-A-R. So black wants to trade off these attackers. White needs to generate an attack on the king side, right? So knight d7, stronger move, puts it in about that 0.3 eval territory. Whereas knight b4, now we're looking at a 0.5 or a 0.6 advantage for white. So white's advantage is starting to approach that clear advantage territory instead of the slight advantage territory. Okay, so now here's the question, next question for the chat. Where is the best square for the white queen? And what new threats does it create? So put your answers in the chat. Where should that queen go here? Knight b4 hits the queen. Okay, Thomas says queen h3. Luca, queen h3. Steve, queen g3. Aditya, queen h3. Dennis, queen h3. Waldez, queen g3. Ian, queen g3. Okay, so everyone's going queen g3 or queen h3. Queen g3 just to plug it in. Stockfish says it's about a 0.2. It looks like knight h5 is a good response, hitting the queen and offering this trade. So the strongest move is queen h3. So good job. Most of you guys got it. Queen h3. So queen h3 is good because it opens up this rook on the d file, right? The queen got off the d file instead of, let's say, queen to d2. She's also eyeing h7 and, importantly, e6. So one thing that white can look at here is the knight on e5 hits the pawn on f7, and the bishop on b3 hits the pawn on e6. So these pawns are a bit of a weakness for black. And this is a bit of foreshadowing, what's going to happen coming up. Those pawns can sometimes collapse due to tactics. So queen h3, strongest move. Now bishop to d5 played. This makes sense. Black wants to trade off some attackers. White plays knight takes d5. c3 knight wasn't really involved in the attack, so white's okay with one trade. Now, this is a huge moment, and it's actually really difficult to understand, and I think it highlights the importance of playing for the initiative. Black has two ways to recapture this with knights. You could capture with the pawn, but accepting your own IQP when white has the bishop pair and the attack, not great for black. Can you guys tell me in the chat, do you want to recapture with the B knight or the F knight? Which one do you think? Just put B or F. It's a big difference, actually. Over a one pawn difference. Okay, this is interesting. It looks like most people are saying B. My instinct was also B. And B was played in the game. But capturing with the B knight pushes the eval up to +2 for white. F is more precise, like Zelda is saying, and Luke is saying, forcing trades. And Waldes. That's the biggest factor. You want to capture with the F knight here, and this has been the theme of this line so far. Black needs to trade off bishops. Keep getting the trades going. Taking with the F knight offers this trade, also opens the possibility to F6, which could help, defend the black king. But when you capture with the B knight, the problem is the F knight's kind of stuck. Even though it's a good defender, it's helping guard the king side, it's helping guard h7. Really, that knight is just keeping black passive. And that's the biggest thing here. Black needs to look to fight back actively and create trades. So this is actually a big mistake, and it highlights the value of white playing so actively. So now f4 is played. So this was mentioned earlier. I think, was it Ian that mentioned this? Going for this f4, f5 plan. Perfect for white. Black sitting back passively. White wants to create an attack. Rook c8. f5, threatening this capture. E takes f. Rook takes f. Now look at white's pieces. Every single white piece is active here. Bishop, rook, knight, rook, bishop, queen. Every white piece has a job. Look at how passive black's position is. The eval here is 2.6. It was actually +3 when I ran it in ChessBase. +3 advantage. White's completely winning with equal material. And if you watched the eval class last week, every one of those factors besides material, white has the advantage on, I think. Even king safety. There's no f2 pawn, but black's king is in much more danger here. More active pieces. White's more active. More space. White. Everything favors white here. Queen d6. And now there's a brilliant tactical shot for white. Can you guys put your answer in the chat? Queen d6 was a blunder, but it was already +3. What does white play here? Put your answers in the chat. This is such a good example of how to play with isolated queen pawn. What does white play? Zelda saying YOLO. Rook takes f6. It is a tactic. Thomas is saying knight takes f7. You can go ahead and take a minute. You don't have to put your answer immediately. Alberto is saying knight takes f7. Lucas saying I feel there's a tactic with the f7 pawn, but can't spot it. This is a pretty deep tactic. It's not easy to spot, and I think it'd be hard to play in a game. You'd have to really calculate it. The answer is knight takes f7. Knight takes f7, and the problem is this d5 knight is going to drop in the end. There's this pin along the diagonal. So rook takes f7. Bishop takes f6, removing a defender of this knight. Bishop takes back, and now you can see two attackers, one defender. Rook takes d5, queen moves, and now rook to d6. Beautiful tactic. The queen eyes c8, bishop eyes f7, and the rook is trying to deflect this queen from the defensive c8. So now queen e8 for black, rook to d7, black resigns on the spot. We're at a +7 eval. Okay, so let's recap. What happened in this game? Black did a good job in the beginning. Black blocked the IQP. That's good. But he didn't find any counterattack or pressure on white and wasn't able to trade off the attackers. Black really needed to look to trade off that g5 bishop early. What did white do? White was Botvinnik. He mobilized his pieces. He used the IQP to launch the attack. He played knight e5. He played f4, f5. Perfect execution. Transition from a position with the advantage due to pressure to a tactical strike to finish off the game. So, pretty good game for black in the start. Black never had any chances to win, though, but could have at least tried to go down the path to playing for a win by getting trades. White played almost a flawless game. Really good execution. Super good attack. Any questions on that game before we go to game number 2, which is another IQP? Yeah, Julio's saying, amazing how the f-pawn played such a big role. It was unintuitive for white to push this. Yep. And that's something we're going to see in the next game too. This f4, f5 idea. I'll back up here. Let's see. Let me get to the position. This f4, f5 idea, when you reach this position, is really strong. Because if white doesn't have f4, f5, then the plan is probably rook e1, rook d3, rook g3. But using just the pieces to attack is not as strong as using that f-pawn. The f-pawn anchors the attack. No, it's not always about pushing the isolated queen pawn to d5. Good question. That can be a good plan for white. But black has the pawn blockaded here. So white has to look for other options. And we're going to talk about this, like the idea of creating attacks on two different flanks, two weaknesses principle. One weakness for black is the king side. The other weakness for black, potential weakness, is d5 being played by white. Right? So black's trying to stop d5, and white says, okay, you stop d5, but now we have this weakness over on the king side. We're going to make you think about both. Okay, Ryan's asking which openings usually see in IQP. There's a ton of them, Ryan. Caro-Kann sees them sometimes, like in the Panov. Yeah, there's so many openings that see IQP. It's super common. Okay, let's go to game number 2. Karpov against Spassky. We see another Queen's Gambit declined. And I'm fast forwarding a bit to get to the position. Right here. Black has the IQP. Question for you guys. Number 1, what's the eval? Put your answers in the chat. What's the eval here? Yeah, F4 plan is new to you, Alberto. I think it's a less common plan for club level players, so this is good. 0.2, 0.4, 0.1, 0. Zelda 0. Okay, this is going to surprise you guys. This eval is going to surprise you. 0.1, 0.1. No one's close yet. Toby 0.5, Benny 0.7. Okay, getting warmer. Jackie minus 0.3. Okay, Ryan Maton 53. Byron 1.2. It's 0.9 for white. White is almost up a whole pawn here. 0.9 for white. Okay. So based on what we learned in that last example, what is black's main goal with the pawn? And what is white's main goal here? Put your answers in the chat. What should each side be playing for here? Yeah, we're going to see why this eval is so high coming up. Okay, maybe white should play knight f3. Put pressure. White wants to trade down. Black needs dynamics. Good, good. Those are all correct. White wants to blockade the IQP. Black mobilized pieces to the king side. Yep. White wants to blockade. Black wants to attack king side. Bishop f3 followed by knight e2 for white. Blockade the pawn. Yeah, these are all very good. Steve saying black outpost on e4. White blockade with knight to d4. Good. You guys are spot on. So the problem for black, the reason this is 0.9, is that plan of knight e4 is not available. Black is not even close to playing knight e4. And this pawn is already weak. Black is already stuck defending that pawn and doesn't have counterplay, doesn't have an attack. So this position is almost as good as black just losing that pawn. It's a 0.9 eval. Okay, so let's see what happens. Knight f3, blockade. Also, there are still two white pieces on e4, so no knight e4 available. h6. So the idea here is black wants to play bishop e6, cement the pawn first, and not worry about knight g5 attacking this bishop. Knight e5 played. Now you guys might be wondering, why not knight takes d5? Knight takes d5 runs into knight takes, rook takes, and knight b4. And black has an advantage. So white can't quite grab that pawn yet. So h6, it's a bit of a sneaky move. Spassky knows that this pawn cannot be captured. So now we're on step 2. Step 1 was blockade the pawn. Step 2 is let's trade pieces strategically as white. And now Karpov starts off with trading the knights. Knight to e5. Karpov feels that both his bishops, so I'll highlight them here, are stronger than black's bishops. The computer does prefer a couple other moves over knight e5, but I don't think we should nitpick in this position because knight e5 is still a strong move. Computer likes, for example, queen to b3, but knight e5, this follows along with what our concrete plans are against the IQP. So this is step 2, trade off pieces. Bishop e6, knight takes c6, rook takes c6. And now a question for you guys. This is a key strategic moment. Karpov is willingly trading pieces. Why is it a good strategy for white when playing against the IQP? Why does white want to trade pieces? I know this is a bit of a review, but put your answers in the chat. Why does white want to trade pieces here? Closer to the endgame. Rook endgame advantage. IQP weakness in the endgame. Remove defenders from the pawn. Keep it isolated. Better endgame. Yeah, this is exactly right. We want to make the whole focus of the game about this weakest pawn on the board. And if white's able to win that pawn and take it to an endgame, that extra pawn could very well just be enough to win. And it'll be a super low risk game for white. Never lose. Good chance to win. Fall back as you just draw the game. So we're removing those potential attackers. So now bishop f3 played. The idea here is this knight is pinned. So knight e4 could come into the picture. Queen b6, getting the queen off of this pin. Bishop e5. And this is a super strong move, guys. Bishop e5. These moves are hard to see in games because you're looking to move the bishop backwards. But that bishop is ready to come back and help on the d4 square. Knight e4. Black finally gets knight e4 in. Queen e2. Knight takes c3. Bishop takes c3. Eval here is around 0.5. Black has not generated an attack. Pawn on d5 is still a weakness. Super low risk for white. And white controls the square in front of the pawn. White controls d4. Rook d8. Rook d3. So now this is what I'm calling step number 3. Step 1 was blockade the pawn, the d5 pawn, for white. Step 2 was trade off pieces. Step 3 is target the IQP. So we're not quite in just a rook and pawn endgame. We have bishops on the boards, queens on the board. But now we're on step 3. White wants to highlight this pawn and target it. So rook d3 is the first step. You guys know what this is called? 2 rooks in front of a queen. You almost never see it in games. There's a name for this. Put your answers in the chat if you know it. Yeah, Alekhine's gun. Nice, nice. Everyone knows. Nice. Squirt guns. Now a question for you guys. We have 4 attackers on this pawn on d5. Here we go. 4 attackers. Black has 4 defenders. So it looks balanced. 4 attackers, 4 defenders. But who is happier at this position, white or black, and why? Put your answers in the chat. Who is happier? I'm not sure why the name Alekhine's gun, actually. It must have come from a game. Who is happier and why? White or black? Okay, white's happier. White's bishops seem more mobile. Alberto's saying Alekhine used it against either Reddy or Nimzovich. Byron is saying 4-on-3 advantage. Thanks, Thomas. Audio and video are good. White has more pressure. Yep, d-pawn's always going to be a problem. Good. Yeah, so this is key for you guys to realize. When you get into a position where everything's equal, but one side's applying all the pressure, and the other side is sitting back just defending and reacting, even if Stockfish says it's close to 0, in a human versus human game, you always want to be that side that's putting the pressure on. You want your opponent to be sitting back reacting to everything that you do. So white now has the option to create a second plan. White can choose when those attackers leave. Black cannot do that. There are some exceptions, of course, but for the most part, black just needs to keep that pawn defended. White has no other weaknesses. Black can't just shift a defender away and go do something else. White can. So it's kind of like when we talk about pawn tension, one side having an extra option. With this tension on the d5 pawn, with this battle over the control of d5, white has the extra option. White's pieces are attacking so they can leave the attack and go do something else. Okay, let's see what happens. b6, b3. Bishops are maneuvering. Black's kind of just waiting. White has all the time in the world to create that second threat. King h2. And now this is interesting. So the colors are flipped from last game. Last game, White had the IQP and played f4. This game, Black has the IQP. White plays f4. This is a very high-level move from Karpov. And the eval is only 0.5 here. White's up 0.5. So it's not like a winning position by any means. It's close to equal. For the whole game, White has been pressuring the pawn on d5. Right? 4 attackers, 4 defenders. Now, we're playing f4. So the question for you guys, what is the strategic idea behind opening up a second front on the king side? So why is White trying to open up a second front? Put your answers in the chat. Let's think through this together. Zilda saying remove defenders. Tony is saying, so the pattern in the IQP, White should play f4 regardless of who has the IQP. Yes, exactly. Thomas, that's exactly right. Tanyu, that's right. Principle of 2 weaknesses. If you guys remember just one thing from the IQP that you learned today, it's probably principle of 2 weaknesses, because I think most of you already knew blockade the pawn, look to trade when you're on the defensive side, look to attack when you have the IQP. But I think that principle of 2 weaknesses is one of the key things that people aren't always aware of. Yep, you guys are all spot on. Black can't defend 2 weaknesses. Defenders are diverted. Perfect. So now f6 was played. Queen d1. So White's just shuffling a bit. g4. All Black's pieces are playing defense. This gives White the freedom to push the pawns on the king side. White can shift pieces away from d5 at any moment first. Black does not have that luxury unless there's an immediate attack. And now Black overreacts. And this happens a lot too, especially at the club level. When one side's sitting back, waiting, it's very easy for them to make some active move that creates their own weaknesses. g5 was played here, and it's a mistake. All the pressure caused Spassky to blunder. And if Spassky blunders, your opponents are going to blunder too. So sitting back and waiting was better, but it's hard to do. Okay, so now after bishop f7, the pressure has worked. Black's position is falling apart here. In this position, Karpov has a decisive move that can change this position from positional pressure to tactical conversion. Can you guys find the move that leads to a winning position for White? Put your answers in the chat. What should White play here? e4, 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 e4. That's right. Karpov wins a pawn, and now it's time to go into endgame conversion mode. So it's winning a pawn because this Alekhine's gun. There are 3 attackers on d7 if Black were to take. So White gets the pawn. Black plays b5, which is a blunder. Eval here is about 1.5 to 2. So it's not 100% winning for White, but it's very, very close. And I think in a human game, human against human, this is probably almost always winning for White. Stockfish may be able to hold as Black, but it's going to be hard. You know, Stockfish versus Stockfish. But b5 was a blunder. And now rook takes e7 is played. Rook takes back, and we see the fork. Queen c4, b3, and Black resigns here. The problem is d takes e7 is coming, and the position completely falls apart for Black. So Black's only up 1 point of material here, and a rook's about to be captured. Okay, so let's recap this game. Karpov set up the early blockade, strategically traded off minor pieces, neutralized any sort of attack that Spassky had, put all the focus on the IQP first. Spassky never got to push that IQP, just sat there defending d5. Spassky never had a clear plan and was stuck in passive defense mode. Karpov used that fact to create a second weakness on the king side and provoked a blunder by Spassky while he was sitting back waiting. So this was a really nice example of how to play against that IQP from the defensive side. And it felt like white had the IQP just because white was able to attack. But that was just like a textbook game by Karpov. Block the IQP, get the kingside attack. Okay, any questions on that game before we go to the next one? Yeah, Alberto's saying also guarded the E4 outpost right from the start. So black was never able to easily get a knight E4. Yeah, Ryan's saying cool game. I agree. Patience is the key in these games. Yes. All right, should we go to the next one? So this game is David Janowski playing white. This is from 1893. Black's name is Steel, S-T-E-E-L. And we're starting with knight F3. And we do have some notes from Janowski in this game, which is kind of cool. Okay, so we're cruising through the opening a bit. And we're going to be talking about hanging pawns. White plays A3. This is a bit of a mistake. And we're going to see why. Hanging pawns. Hanging pawns are when you have pawns on usually D4 and C4 or D5 and C5, and your opponent doesn't have pawns on those two files, and then you're able to like line your rooks up against them. A3 sets up a hanging pawn position. Let me just show you what white should play here. C takes D5. Knight takes, queen takes, D takes, trade, rook D7. White can get a small advantage. All the pawns symmetric. A3 though, this allows black to play D takes C4. And after B takes C4, C takes D4, E takes D4. We get this hanging pawn structure. So this is the hanging pawn structure. Pawns on D4 and C4. They do a nice job controlling a lot of space, but they cannot be defended by other pawns, and black is able to line up major pieces along those two files. So hanging pawns actually have a lot of similarities, in my opinion, to isolated queen pawns. The side with the hanging pawns is very similar to the side with isolated queen pawns. And often you'll find in games you can shift from one to the other. Usually it tends to be the side with the IQP will maybe have, let's say, their knight on C3 captured, and the B pawn takes back, and then it transfers into a hanging pawn position. So they can kind of go back and forth sometimes within one game, but it's similar ideas. So first question for you guys, what do you think the eval is here? Put your answers in the chat. We just reached this hanging pawn position. What's the eval? What do we think? Asanga is saying, can you please explain whether there are times IQP is good? Yeah, if you have the attack with the IQP, it's really good. And you shouldn't fear it. You know, my bias tends to be playing against it, but I've gotten my position just wrecked sometimes playing on the defensive side. Okay, let's see. -0.2, -0.3, -0.2, -0.6, -0.4, -0.5, -0.3. Okay, most people are saying black is better. That's correct. The eval is -1 here. So why is it -1? Black can quickly attack the hanging pawns before white's able to orchestrate an attack. First move for black, knight A5. Double attack on one of the pawns. Yeah, Ryan's saying -1 question mark exclam. When you have hanging pawns, you need to generate activity quickly. You don't want to be playing defense. So white plays knight E5 to defend. Black goes knight D7. Similar to an IQP, black wants to trade off pieces because white's hanging pawns can help white generate an attack. So black is trying to trade off pieces here. Knight takes, queen takes. Now white plays knight to B1. So white's on the defense. We already know black is better. And black's plan is to attack the weak pawns I want you guys to tell me what is the most precise and powerful move for black right here to build the pressure. Put your answers in the chat. What is the best move for black here? Okay, good, Ryan. Hanging pawn idea is new to you. That's good. You'll have a lot to learn. Just perfect. Okay, Lucas saying queen c6. Toby saying queen c6. Alberto saying bishop a6. Bishop a6 was played in the game by Steele. Zelda, rook f to e8. Okay, Asanga was the first one to get the correct answer. Rook f to d8. This is the strongest move. What we want to do is apply as much pressure from the black side on these pawns as possible. Rook f to d8 is the logical move to do that, followed by bishop to f6, and maybe bishop to a6. Let's get all of these pieces attacking the pawns. Now, we already talked about how hanging pawns and isolated queen pawns can switch back and forth. One strategy for black here, let's get one of these pawns to push forward. The pawns are strongest next to each other, and we're really going to see this in the next game's example. Hanging pawns, want to be next to each other. When they're next to each other, they control all of these squares. If you get one to push, it's not a good move here, but I'm just showing an example. If you get one to push, the pawns only control light squares, and it creates holes on the dark squares. And what can happen is you can get positions like this, where all of a sudden the hanging pawns switch to an isolated pawn. So that's kind of the goal for black. Attack these pawns, get one to push eventually, create different weaknesses, right? But we want to keep the game in a situation where those pawns are weak for white. So rook f to d8 was the strongest move, pressuring the pawns. Bishop a6 was played, though. Not quite as strong. Knight to d2. Again here, rook f to d8 is the strongest move. Bishop f6 was played first. And now white plays knight e4. Super strong move. The problem for black is knight e4 threatens to trade off the bishop. White gets the bishop pair. And even though black wants trades here, because the pawns are fluid, no pawns are locked up with each other, the bishop pair could be extremely strong for white. Black does not want that. Black does not want those white bishops to become strong. And now in the game, he actually plays bishop back to e7. So he admits the mistake. So it's white's turn here. What is the best move for white? And this goes a little bit against what I just said, but there are exceptions to every rule. Put your answers in the chat. What is the best move for white? So white needs to play actively. Look to fight back, because these pawns just become weaknesses long term. One way to attack is the king side, but there's another way to attack here. Luca got the answer right. c5. d5 is the second best move. So here c5 is best. Black wasted some time moving that bishop back and forth. c5 is the strongest move. The problem for black now is these bishops are in line, and if black takes, queen takes, and takes here, let's say, d takes c5 is actually a strong pawn because black wasted time, right? So now we see this rook coming to d1, bishop pointing to g7, the knight well placed, the queen can fly out. White has a ton of play at the cost of just having this potential weakness, and the eval is 0.7 for white. So c5 here was the way to go. I should also note, instead of bishop e7, you guys might be wondering, can black take this pawn? After knight takes, pawn takes, takes, queen g4 check. The position's unclear. The computer says equal, but black really doesn't want to go into this position with the open king. So bishop e7 played. Even with c5, it's still an advantage for black, but c5 was the best way for white to not get into a really bad position. But instead, he played d5, second best move. Rook f to d8. Queen d4, threatening a checkmate. f6. Bishop g4. And look what white's doing. They're using the hanging pawns to play extremely actively, even though if you look at the eval here, it's -2. So black is better, but white's doing the right thing. White's making this position extremely messy. Make it difficult for black. Knight to b3 with a fork. That's actually a blunder. That's a huge blunder. The best move is rook takes c4 or bishop takes c4. Those are the only two moves that keep black in that -2 territory. Knight to b3 is the third best move, and it's a 0.5 for white. So by white playing active, white gave black a tough decision here in a messy position, and black blundered. White was able to fight back by playing active. That's the key. Queen e3. Queen a4. Massive blunder. The best move here is actually f5. You have to block the bishop, because bishop's threatening e6. Black blunders. Bishop takes e6. King h8. d6. Bishop takes. Now here's a question for you guys in the chat. This move walks into a beautiful tactic for white. Can you find the best move for white? And then we'll go back and answer Ryan's question. Why not bishop takes e6 check? What is the best move for white here? Mohammed got it. Knight takes f6. This was played in the game. Okay, let's just go back quick. In this position, why not bishop takes e6? Queen takes e6. Pawn takes. And knight takes d4. So black's able to get the queen back, and black is winning here. It's a good question. I kind of glossed over it quickly. Queen e3. Bishop takes e6. d6. Bishop takes. Knight takes f6. So white was able to use a messy position, encourage some blunders by black, and then finish black with tactics. Now here, there's one last fun move. Thomas mentioned it on the last one. Queen to h6. Black resigns. Pawn takes queen, runs into knight h5. There's only a couple pieces that can block. And this is just a really cool checkmate using two bishops. Help of the knight with the discovered check. Nothing black can do. So to summarize that game, black had the advantage here. Black was doing everything correctly, but white made things messy. And black wasted a little bit of time, which didn't help. And then when it came to a tactical position, black had to shift from that strategic mindset to tactics. Black just wasn't able to find the best moves. A move here like bishop takes c4 was the way to go. Noticing that after this capture, we can take, still get the queen, and black is winning in this position. Black's up a piece. So pretty nice game. Both sides had chances. The side with the hanging pawns did come out ahead. Okay, any questions on that game before we go to the next one? We're going to do another hanging pawn game. Any questions on the first hanging pawn game? What would be the right moment to push the pawns? Good question. With the hanging pawns, usually what you want to do is calculate the pawn pushes every single move. And you have to just weigh the options. Does the pawn push either give you a bigger advantage, if you're the side that already has the edge, creates some sort of tactical threats or shots, opens up your bishop on the long diagonal, let's say sitting on b2. Or if you're in a worse position, like we just saw in that game, does pushing the pawns make the position messy and make it more difficult for your opponent to convert the advantage? So there, black had the advantage. The pawns were weak. And white said, you know what? Let's go with the YOLO strategy. Let's push a pawn. Let's make it messy. And making it messy encouraged black to make mistakes. Okay, so this next game, we get a Catalan opening. It's sort of like a Bogo Indian / Catalan. I love these positions for white. We reach this position, hanging pawns. I want you guys to tell me in the chat, number 1, what's the eval? And number 2, what are the plans for both sides? And I will be back in 1 minute. So if you want to take a quick break, refill your drink, that's what I'm going to do. Put the eval in the chat, plans for both sides, and I'll be back in 1 minute. Okay, 0.7, 0.8, 0.5, minus 0.2, 0.5, 0.3, 0.5. Yeah, the answer is 0.5 or 0.6, somewhere in that range. And I'm seeing knight to b3. Thomas mentioned that. Zelda agrees. Waldez, knight b3. Luca, knight b3. Good, good. Okay, you guys are spot on. You got the eval. You got the plan for white. I'm just reading the notes here. It's worth noting 2 sets of minor pieces are off. Okay. Compare this to the last game. We only have 2 minor pieces each here. That's a big difference as well. Black only has 2 minor pieces to work with in terms of generating play with those hanging pawns. On average, just like an IQP, the side with the hanging pawns or the side with the IQP wants more minor pieces on the board. More minor pieces creates more tactics, more chances to attack, more ways for your opponent to go wrong. And it negates or it devalues that pawn in the sense of being a weakness, right? You don't want that pawn to be the focus of the whole game. You want that pawn to just be kind of sitting there in the background, maybe anchoring an attack, but really the game's all about the pressure that you're able to create. So here black's missing 2 minor pieces. That's going to be tougher to generate an attack. Knight to b3, first move. We see a double attack on this pawn and a double attack on this pawn. c4 by black. This is forced. So black has to play c4. It's the only way to defend both pawns. And now we see white's already got that first goal achieved, getting one pawn to push forward. So now the dark squares are open, right? These 2 squares were attacked by the pawn. Black's pawns in the center only control light squares now. We can blockade this pawn. So similar to an IQP, you want to be able to blockade those hanging pawns, and then you can work around them and attack them. Queen a5, pawn to b3, and we just talked about this earlier. The hanging pawn structure could transfer to an isolated pawn structure if these pawns trade off. So if c takes b, for example, queen takes b3, isolate a pawn structure. And this is something that you guys should be thinking about in your games. Always think about imbalances. And can you shift the nature of the position at the right time? Maybe create a stronger imbalance in your advantage, right? So you might think this IQP position is better than the hanging pawn position. That will help you find a move like b3. And in this case, it's true. Your advantage here is about 0.6. b3 is not a bad move at all. It's a good move. And if black takes, then you're up about 1.1. So you convert that hanging pawn advantage to an even better isolated pawn advantage. This is how you can grind down your opponents. And this is high-level stuff, but once your rating gets higher and higher, your opponents are going to stop making the easier blunders, and you're going to use these positional ideas to get them into positions where they're uncomfortable, and then you got to look for imbalances, and can you keep adding pressure, and eventually they make a mistake. Instead of positions where maybe they just make mistakes without too much encouragement by you. Okay, so b3, rook to b8, knight f5. So white's the one playing actively here. There's a pin on the d file. B takes c4 is threatened. And white's now using the principle of two weaknesses, creating an attack on the king side. So plan 1, focus on the pawns in the center. Plan 2, attack black's king. This makes it really difficult for black. How does black defend against both weaknesses? Queen takes a2, looks like a free pawn, but after b takes c4, it's actually winning for white. That knight is still behind this pinned pawn, so black's not able to even win a pawn. +3 eval. Okay, so instead, knight f6 played in the game. Rook c2. I like this move a lot. White's saying, I'm going to take one move, defend this pawn on a2. It's the only threat, that's the only play that black has in the position. And we can simply play rook c2 to negate that. Right now, there's no queen takes a2 threat. Queen c1, getting the queen off the d file and rerouting her to f4. Okay, so now let's look at this move. White has spent the whole game trying to pressure this d pawn, right, and blockading it. But now queen f4 was just played. White just brought the queen out here. What's the new plan for white? And why is white able to launch this new plan? So put your answers in the chat. New plan for white, number 1. Number 2, why is white able to do it? House is saying there's a threat of knight takes h6 check. Thomas is saying g4, g5. Yeah, so knight takes h6 check. This is kind of the obvious threat. G takes back, and this knight drops. So queen f4 is highlighting these dark squares around the black king. And second part of the question, why is white able to do this? Why does white have the luxury of playing queen f4 and not focusing so much on the center pawns? Thomas is saying because there's an absence of defenders. Defenders are over on the queen side. Black doesn't have enough defenders around the king. Black is defending the pawns. No weaknesses for white. Yes, I think it's a combination of those two things. Black is stuck defending the pawns. So the black pieces are playing passive, guarding those weaknesses in the center. I really do like Luca's point that white's king is safe and white has no weaknesses. So black is not able to easily shift from the defense of the pawns. We as white are able to act first and create a second weakness, which is the king side. So principle of two weaknesses, exactly right. C takes B, A takes, queen B6, rook C1. Now we see white's getting every piece into the game. This B3 pawn looks loose. White does not care about the pawn because this queen has to defend F6. Now black makes a blunder. Black was under pressure. Black cracked in this position. Again, best move for black here is king F8. No player wants to sit back and just play passive forever and wait for the opponent to keep generating more attacking moves, generating more threats. King f8, best move. Knight e8, another top move for black. Nobody wants to play these moves, right? Black wants to play actively, but this is a huge blunder. This takes the position from +1 to +3. So +3. Can you guys find the winning combination for white? So this has shifted now from positional advantage to adding pressure. And just like 2 moves later, after the principle of 2 weaknesses, black completely collapses with the blunder. Can you guys find the best sequence for white? Give me a couple moves, so it's more than 1 move. What should white do here? Clem's asking, what's the opening when white double fiend kettles? There is an opening just called the double fiend kettle. The Catalan has that quite a bit too. This one was sort of like a Bogo Indian Catalan. Okay, you guys are on the right track. Yep, you're on the right track. So Thomas got it exactly. Bishop takes b7, followed by rook c6. So white wants to get the rooks into the attack. House is pretty close. Yep, Luca. Bishop takes b7, rook c7. Close, but you want the rook on c6. So let's see how it works. Bishop takes, rook c6, hitting the queen, hitting the knight, highlighting these weak dark squares around the black king. Queen takes b3, rook takes f6, g takes, queen takes h6, threatening a mate in 1. It's actually mate in 2 with best play. The best move for black is queen d1 check. And after takes, black can't get out of the mate. So this game, I think, was a really good highlight of a textbook example of playing against those hanging pawns. We got a pawn to push right off the bat. Blockaded him. Principle of 2 weaknesses. Black makes a blunder very quickly. Convert with tactics. 28 move game. Pretty much everything went perfectly against the hanging pawns. So hanging pawns, black was never able to generate any attack here. Any questions on that game before we go to the Caro-Kann Tartakower? Yeah, Thomas and Julio are saying nice game. I like that one a lot. Who were the players? Good question. White was Sandro Morco. Black was Christian Endre Toth. And I don't know those players. I was just searching for good examples. Andrew Toth. Nice. Close. Long lost relative. All right, let's go to the Caro-Kann Tartakower. This one's a little bit different. We do not have any pieces on the board. We just have pawns and a king. So this is going to be a special example. This pawn structure comes out of the Caro-Kann Tartakower. We recommend this in our Caro-Kann course for black. And a lot of players have a steep learning curve to figure out how do you play with these pawns as black. Because you have 4 versus 3 on the king side, but the 4 versus 3 seems like they're kind of stuck, right? You can't really force a passed pawn. But then white has 4 versus 3 on the queen side with a potential passed pawn coming soon. Okay, so we count the pawns, they're equal. The advantage, though, is the 4 versus 3 queen side for white. That's the entire plan for white. So let's just see what happens here for white. First move, I'm going to play g4. The idea here is blockading the double pawns. We don't want to allow black to trade that off. And now both sides activate their kings. As soon as black wants to play f5, White goes king e4 to prevent it. And now white wants to create a pass pawn. c4. f4. f5 does not help black because of capture, capture, and the king moves. And now these pawns are stuck, and white still has the extra pawn on the d file. So let's say c5 for black. This is sneaky. If white pushes past, this could become a blockade for black. I think it is still winning for white, but it's sort of tempting white to play into this, and it's not as easy to calculate. So let's go f5 check for white. King moves. Now a3. So we're letting black take here if he wants to, knowing that we can take back and create this passer later. And after a5, b3, king moves, king d3, king d6, king c3. Question for you guys. So now we're talking pawn structure, but we're talking endgame here. Why did the white king leave e4, which seemed like such a good outpost, and moved all the way over to c3? What's the strategy? Clem's asking, can you flip it as a Caro-Kann player? Sure, we'll look at this from black side. Why did white retreat the king back to c3? There's a reason for this. The king was strong in the center. Julio and House are both saying to prepare b3 to b4. Thomas said the same thing. Dennis said the same thing. Force a pass pawn on the queen side. It's exactly right. You guys are all spot on. White wants to force a pass pawn on the queen side. b4 is the way to do it. G takes f, G takes f. These pawns are stuck. King c6. And now d takes c5 played. And white is about to get the pass pawn after b takes, b4. Nothing black can do. Takes, takes. And I'm not going to play out this endgame, but I think you guys should know it. This king and pawn can essentially just keep forcing the black king backwards. And then eventually the white king could abandon that pawn and go for other pawns and get the win that way. So completely winning for white. This is what black has to be afraid of in the Tartakower. And this should create sort of a sense of urgency for black in the Tartakower, which leads us to our next game. Let's look at this one from the black side. So white, we have a player named Sejun Zang. This was played at the Chicago Open. Black, we have a player named Matt Jensen. And we're going to see a Caro-Kann Tartakower. So this is called the Caro-Kann right here. When knight c3 is played, it's the classical variation. Knight f6 is the Tartakower. This is Tartakower accepted when white takes. First question for you guys. I've just accepted the doubled pawns. As we've talked about all day, what are the pros and cons to the double pawns? What are the plans for each side? Put your answers in the chat and see what you guys think. Julio saying, nice, playing what you teach. House is saying, is this the same Matt Jensen we are seeing? I don't know if I want to admit to that. It's possible. Possibly the same Matt Jensen. And yeah, black is losing if you get into that endgame. Correct. I cannot confirm or deny if I know this Matt Jensen. Okay, pro, open D and E files, an additional king protection. That's exactly right, Tanya. Cody's saying extra protection on the king side. Yep. Julio can push the extra F pawn, launch a king side attack, keep the king super safe. Yes. Good. Aditya, control more squares around the king. King side protection. Ryan. Alberto, it's you. The con is 4 versus 3 queen side. Yeah. You guys got it. Okay. Bishop c4. Bishop d6. 92. Castle. Castle. Queen c7. Knight g3. I'm going through these moves kind of quickly. White wants to trade. Tartakower is similar to the IQP and the hanging pawns in that black doesn't want to trade off too many pieces because we'll reach that endgame that we just looked at. So one strategy for white that I face all the time from the black side, white will just try to trade everything. Trade every piece off to get to that endgame. But you can use that to your advantage too. If you know white's trying to trade everything, you can sort of bait them into trades that are advantageous for you. So that's something to think about. Takes. Knight f8. Now I had this idea prepared. Queen e8 is really tempting here, and my opponent played it. But I had this cool move ready. Rook to b8. So queen e8 was annoying because it was pinning this bishop down, and it was creating a double attack on f7, tying my queen down. But I was ready for it with rook to b8. And this move was actually inaccurate because now I'm able to develop my bishop, move this guy out with a tempo against the queen. For example, bishop to e6 here is a huge threat. Queen e4, bishop d7. Position's equal already. So from the Tartakower, usually white starts with a 0.2 or 0.3 edge. Now we're close to equal. And it's because white wasted a move. Bishop e3, rook e8, queen f3, knight g6. Everything's going well. I like this position. Bishops both kind of point to the king side. White's d-pawn's not creating any big threats. My knight's over here. Rook's well placed. Everything's good. The e1 square is loose for white, meaning this bishop is pinned down. No issues here. Now this next move really shocked me. My opponent plays knight h5. And this was a really difficult moment for me in the game. This is an over-the-board classical game. Or for Matt, I should say. My opponent just played knight h5. It looked scary, and it threw me off in the game. I spent 15 minutes here. One of the ideas for white is bishop to h6. And I was really afraid of just getting blown off the board. I don't normally see the queen on f3 and the knight on g3 in the Tartakower. So it wasn't my typical pattern recognition game where I knew what to do based on the position. I was calculating on my own. Question for you guys. Do we capture h2 here? Or do we play something else? So you can answer this by just put the best move in the chat. What's the best move for black here? And let's spend a minute or two thinking about this. You don't have to put the answer right away. Let's weigh the pros and cons. Do we capture on h2? Do we want to capture an h2? You guys are funny. Okay, do we capture on h2? Or do we play something else? What do we think? Okay, I'm seeing king h8, so the rook can go to g8. Alberto's saying it looks risky. Rage says looks safe as it comes with a check. Dennis says bishop to f8 looks passive though. Free pawn, you can always bring the bishop back. I would capture. Okay, I'm glad you guys aren't 100% one way or the other because it is a difficult position. I'm leaning towards f5. Knight h4, bishop e6. Okay, the best move here is to capture. Bishop takes h2 check. After king h1, bishop to d6, my big fear of bishop h6 is actually not that big of a threat. We can ignore the bishop for now and play bishop back to f8, or an even sneakier move, queen a5. Queen a5 threatens a mate because our bishop guards h2. I think if I had seen queen a5, I go for it. I didn't appreciate that white king is almost mated back there on the back rank. And that's been a blind spot for me in general, back rank mates. But here, even bishop to f8 is strong enough. There's nothing scary white can do here. Everything's defended. The problem is if white sacrifices anything, they just don't have enough material left to attack. Any sort of sacrifice, white's going to lose both minor pieces. So now the best move for white is to retreat. And then we got everything we wanted. Grabbed the pawn, ran away. So I missed it. I was kind of seeing ghosts. But this is one where you have to just calculate it out and then trust your calculation. Instead, I played bishop to e6. This was recommended in the chat by Waldez. And my idea was I just want to neutralize the attack. Bishop takes e6. Now here in hindsight, I probably should have taken with the f-pawn and just kind of accepted that this position's equal, but a little bit passive for black. Instead, I played rook takes e6. The reason I don't like this move in hindsight is because I'm still dealing with the 4 versus 3 queen side, and pieces are coming off the board. g3, queen a5, c4. So my opponent is trying to get d5 in. I played knight e7, and this was kind of a first mistake. I'm uncomfortable here. I see this coming, and I'm overreacting. What I should play is h6 first. And if the queen moves, then knight e7. And if knight f4, trade it off because of this pin. If this is played right away, c takes d, rook e5. Everything's well placed. So I didn't have to overreact and start with knight e7. This gives white like a 0.7 advantage. Now he plays knight f4. And after takes, even though this bishop looks like sort of a bad piece, it's not terrible. And white's still trading off pieces. So how do I generate play here? Kingside play. And actually, I did the right thing. I played g5. So the eval is around 0 now, 0.00. g5. I love this move, and I'm actually baiting white. I want them to play queen b8 and queen takes b7. If you watch the practical endgame class that I did, you'll know that one of the keys to winning endgames is to play actively. It's super important to play active in the endgame. This is a perfect example of that too. Usually we're taught in an endgame being up material is enough to win. If white plays queen to b8 check, and I move the king up, and white captures b7, this is a minus 2.5. I can go knight f5, double attack here. I'm still looking at rook to e1. There's no way for white to defend that bishop. There's no good squares for it to move to. White has no extra pawns they can capture. This is already winning for black. So always look for those sort of active moves too. Don't be afraid to play g5 here because you think white's winning a pawn. Go deeper and look, can I play actively? Can I create more problems for white than that pawn is worth? And in this case, black is just simply winning the pawn back if he wants to as well. So that's always nice. But my opponent instead retreated queen to f3. Okay. So white retreats. We have a good, solid position as black. But to win, we need to use the pawns. The doubled f pawns are just sitting here right now. They have not moved yet. Question for you guys in the chat. What is the active, aggressive plan for black to use the pawns as a weapon on the king side? What moves does black need to play here? House is saying we are trading too much. We still have just enough pieces on. We have enough that we can hold the balance and create some problems for white. But we're getting dangerously close to having too many trades happen. Ryan's saying, I would see this, but not the other Matt Jensen guy. Nice. Cody's saying, march the F-pawn forward. Dennis is saying, F-pawn with prep. House, yep. Yeah, you guys got it. So first, black should play H6. Defend this pawn. Let's give white a move. Now play something like knight to G6. Let's give white a waiting move. F5. So you want something like this. H guards G and then push the F pawn. That's the idea. Okay, so what did I do in the game? Rook D6. I'm very concerned about white's play. I should be looking to play active though. Queen E4 played. Queen D8. So notice how I'm putting every piece on this square. What did we just talk about in the prior games? White doesn't have an IQP yet. But as soon as white plays D5, it's probably going to become an IQP. I'm sitting back and just defending the IQP, giving white all the active play. I need to look to play active myself. This position is going to start to slip. Rook E1, Rook E6, Queen D3. Now I play F5. So we're both down to about 15 minutes to make 14 moves. But the better plan now is actually to leave this pawn here, play H5, Bishop D2, Queen D7, for example, King G7, and Knight G6, and create this position. D5, takes, Knight E5. What you can see here is even though white has this passed pawn, the bishop is not super strong for white. Our knight's a good piece. We're going to push the H-pawn up the board. We have ideas of bringing the queen in. The knight's eyeing these light squares. We have enough active counterplay that the eval here is close to equal. The computer's saying minus 0.1. I think if you run it, infinite analysis, it's equal. Another idea is G4, followed by knight F3 check, and there's maybe mating ideas back here. We get the queen back. Always look to play actively. Okay, so I played F5, Rook to D1, Rook to G6, and this is where I start to get into trouble. I don't have a good plan here. I really don't know where the counterplay is coming from. F5 looked cool, but I'm playing Rook G6. Like, what's the idea? How am I attacking here? D5, C takes D5. Oh, good question. Wasn't the G pawn hanging? This is pinned currently. So Rook D1 threatens Bishop takes G5. That's why I defended. D5, C takes D5. Okay, so this is where I start to lose the thread. Our king is potentially weak if things open up. White's D pawn is about to become a monster. My opponent, instead of taking on D5 though, found an even stronger move. And let's flip the board, because this is where I want you guys to put yourself in white's shoes and tell me what's the best move for white. My opponent found the top move, and I did not see this coming during the game. We were under some time pressure, but I didn't see this coming. White has a way to really push for the win here. It's not quite winning territory with best play yet, but I think in practical chances, it's essentially winning. So C takes D5 is not the best move. The eval here is only a 0.5 because I can blockade, and this was my plan. And I think I wanted this type of position. If black takes G5, I can take D5, but I just want to blockade that pawn and play passive defense. That was sort of my goal, but white found a stronger move. Okay, Luca's saying bishop C5, Julio's saying C5, pawn C5. Sanga's saying rook D6, Dennis C5. Oh, interesting. Pawn c5 actually gives the advantage to black. f4 is an idea. It's about a 0.4 for black. So not massive, but the advantage goes to black. Thomas says I like bishop c5. That's correct. Luca and Thomas got it. Bishop to c5. This pawn is stuck, and bishop takes e7 is threatened. So, when black played f5 and g5, when I played f5 and g5, those moves are good for generating an attack, but they're double-edged. As my attack fizzled, those pawns make my king exposed. I have to be very careful. Bishop c5 is a super strong move. Here I played f4, trying to get active. C takes d, f takes g, h takes knight c8, trying to play defense. My opponent plays d6. Painful. Look at how bad these pieces are. Queen d7, trying to blockade. Queen d5, h6. And now the problem is, we just talked about this in all the other games. I'm stuck playing defense. My opponent's playing offense. All I can do is sit and focus on the d-pawn. Principle of two weaknesses is about to happen. Question for you guys. What's the eval here? Equal material. I think this might shock you. And this is with Stockfish on depth 21. It's pausing at depth 21. I think it'll be even more extreme once it keeps running. +2, +2, 2.5, 1.2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3. It's 3.7, and it stopped at depth 21. I think you let this run, and it's going to find some like checkmate in 58 moves. It's already winning for white. Completely winning. Queen d4, rook e6. So I'm looking for some play. a4, h5. This is my attempt. Queen d5 hitting this weak pawn. Rook back to g6. I'm on defense. Queen e5. I got to watch for this, followed by mate. That's in my head. h4, bishop d4, threatening the mate. Now I have to play f6. Queen d5. So look at how white's just poking and prodding at my position. The rook on g6 is now an even worse piece. It's just stuck behind pawns. I really don't have any h-file pressure here. I'm sort of bluffing at it. You know, I'm hoping I can get something. Rook, queen h3. Could I get some counterplay going? King h7. Rook c1. So my opponent sees the king here. He says, all right, I'm going to take the rook off of the defense of this pawn. Threaten rook c7. Knight takes d6 I played. Bishop c5 though, and this knight's pinned. I go h3. He takes. h2 takes. King moves. I go for a little mate, but now my king's out in the open. It's mate in 5, and I resign. It's a pretty difficult game. This kind of shows in the Tartakower how black needs to look to play actively. You know, missing the bishop takes h2 right here was huge. This was a chance for me to play for a win right out of the opening. So this is 17 moves in. I could have got an almost winning position, if not winning, by just grabbing that pawn and retreating the bishop. After missing that, I think my opponent played really well. And somewhere around here, I should have looked to play h6, f5, or king g7, h5. But instead, I was focused too much on defense. Right, queen d8. Not a great move. And actually here, playing f5 exposed me a little bit. Because now there's not a great way to defend this pawn. So I think the lesson was, in this position, play h5 or back a little bit. Right here, play h6, f5. But keep this rook active, right? Look for this sort of play. That's the key of the game. Play actively, especially when you're side with the pawn weaknesses. So I had the pawn weaknesses. I had the doubled f pawns. I need to look to play actively. All right, any questions on that game? Because we need to do a course giveaway before we wrap up. We're giving away one course today. Any questions? I have a question for you guys before we do the giveaway. Where did you hear about today's stream? Today's live stream? I think I learned a lot from this game, Julio, because it was an over-the-board classical game. I spent a lot of time analyzing it, and the setup that White had in the opening was new to me. So I'll really remember the ideas in future games. Email. Last week's live stream. Email. Last week's stream. Good. Last week's stream. Email and Discord. House, that's awesome. You just came from YouTube. Very good. Oh, Byron. Okay, email, but only 90 minutes in advance. So what I've been doing, Byron, is I send one email earlier in the week. So if that one went to spam or promotions, like let's say you have Gmail, you can click and drag it to your primary inbox. But that must mean you missed the first email. I think I sent it on Wednesday for the first one. Song guy, come here every Sunday. Awesome. Lee, I would like a little more notice. Okay, guys, so I'm giving the notice the first time during the week, but sometimes the email might not be finding your primary inbox. I don't know the best way to get it there, but I also post in Discord and on social media. But I've been trying to let everyone know on the Wednesday in advance. We will plan to do another one. Let me just check, make sure I'm saying the right day. I think we will plan to do another one this Sunday at the same time next week. And then we're going to have a couple weekends off. One for Black Friday, and then we're not going to do one in 2 weeks. So I think the schedule is going to be on the 8th we'll have one, and on the 22nd we'll have one. The 9th and the 23rd. Off on the 16th and 30th. So keep that in mind, 9th and 23rd. Plan on live streams. Okay. Let's go to the question for the free course. So this is going to be a numeric answer. Whoever puts the numeric answer in first, you have to get it exact. The first person I see in the chat that gets this answer exact wins a free course. And if you're lifetime access, still put an answer because you can either gift your free course to someone else or we'll do an Amazon gift card for, I think I did $25 last time. $25 US. You guys ready? You can Google this, but Googling it may cost you a few seconds and someone else might get it first. Okay, here's the question. We just looked at the Caro-Kann Tartakower. What year was Tartakower born? The player. Let's see who gets it. House was quick with the Googling. About 7 or 8 answers came in first, but House was the first answer I see in the chat. 1887, correct. Okay, House. So either let me know in Discord. There's a link in the description if you want to join the Discord, or send me an email, matt@chessgoals.com. Spider says, same year I was born. Nice. Let me know, House, one way or the other, which course you want. And it's if you don't have a ChessGoals account yet on our course site, go to chessgoals.com. Sign up for an account, House. Like just sign up for one of the free courses maybe, because then I can go in and add it to your account. If you don't have an account yet, I'll have to give you instructions on how to make an account. Okay, so what do we want to look at next week? So we're going to do another live stream next week, Sunday. You guys want to do more pawn structures or something else? Because I do have some more pawn structure content. I also have some imbalance content in terms of piece imbalances that we could look at. Or do we want to shift topics completely and not do imbalances? Pawn breaks, pawn structures, imbalances. Both sound nice. Endgames. Piece imbalances. Okay. Whatever will be good. All right, I will plan on either a little bit more pawn structure content, piece imbalances, or both. Yeah, let's just do kind of a continuation of today's class. So I have a couple other pawn structure examples, and then we could jump into piece play, piece imbalances. Yeah, there is a Tartakower Queen's Gambit declined. I don't know how many openings Tartakower has outside of those two. Those are kind of the two obvious ones. Yeah, I just searched around for games and looked for good examples. Dennis's pawn structure. Awesome. All right, I think we will wrap up there. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Stay tuned for your emails to confirm the date, and it'll be in Discord as well. But plan on next Sunday, same time, 10 a.m. U.S. Central Time. All right, thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.